Well, they're not all back because a couple of guys transferred. But Trey Alexander and Ryan Kalkbrenner are back. Keisei Tominaga is back for Nebraska. This is the Half Court Press podcast with special guest Tom Shatel, who will be talking some hoops with us. Mostly Creighton hoops because, hey, Creighton's the better team, and, hey, they got the two best players on their team from last year, in my humble opinion, back for the 2023-2024 season. Hello, everybody. Joel Lorenzi with me, as well as, of course, he's going to go over Trey Alexander's decision-making process because it was kind of down to the wire for him. I will talk a little bit about Keisei Tominaga. I don't know that it was exactly down to the wire with Keisei, but we'll kind of unpack the dynamics there. He is returning for one more year to Nebraska, I would presume. He can, in theory, go back to Japan and play pro, but I think he's going to stick with the Huskers. He'll have a press conference on Friday. We're recording this on Thursday. We will start with this. Creighton. We kind of talked last week, Joel, about Ryan Kalkbrenner's decision-making. I think his decision coming on Memorial Day, as quirky as it was, sort of the Dwight Schrute, it is I am coming back for another year thing. He did it.
That's a perfect way to describe it.
He said it. It is your birthday. He did it. They all kind of felt like maybe he was going to do that. He kind of said as much at the Combine that he was probably going to do that. Trey Alexander was different. Your interviews with Trey at the Combine indicated he was truly on the fence. And then based on what you had heard through yesterday, this was a game-time decision. This came right down to the wire. Unpack for us why Trey decided to come back and what maybe he was considering, what he was weighing that against as he decided to leave the NBA draft.
Yeah, and kind of like you mentioned, we talked about Kalkbrenner a bunch of times, but there's a difference, right? Like, obviously, it would be ridiculous to say, like, oh, Kalkbrenner didn't want to go to the NBA. Obviously, these dudes want to play at the highest level. But I think there was a difference between the ambition for these two, just in the sense that Kalkbrenner, I think he just wanted to be in a spot where he knew he was going to get better, where would allow, maximum development over the next 12, 10, 8 months, whatever.
Right.
And with Trey Alexander, I'm not sure he was trying to suppress his development, but I think for a guy that, if I remember correctly, didn't even get any preseason nods last year in the Big East, made this huge leap, has thought about the NBA even when people probably figured it was a pipe dream for him. I remember talking to him, I mentioned this a few times, talking to him before the season last year at Media Day, and he was the first one who threw that in my ear, like, yeah, I could go to the draft after this year if I wanted to. I'm like, well, that seems kind of crazy because when I got here, I was under the impression, like, if you were going to make that leap, it would take you 2 years. Mm-hmm. And now it will for him to get that, solidify our probably first-round standing. But, he was well in the conversation. Like, this was a thing where we watched down to – we thought we were going to be waiting until midnight for his decision. And so I think –
Creighton did too.
Yes. And so for a guy like that who, has thought about the NBA before others really pinned it on him, got so close, sniffed it, had a fair showing in Chicago during the week of the Combine, had workouts with teams, went through this entire process, got so close. There was some tug and pull for, a guy that got so close to his dream to say, do I really want to go back to college, I think. And you look yesterday and you saw the way things unfolded. And I think I'm not sure, like you could say some guys have it in their heart what their decision is, but they won't announce it. I think Trey's decision was legitimately decided yesterday. There are members of the department that I think didn't even know his decision until he announced it. Obviously, they had been delivering their pitches as much as they could. And from what I understand, it really came down to, Trey. I think Trey's mind began to turn. I mean, the workouts came, but from what I heard, the teams that were working them out were in the mid-40s or beyond that, sinking deeper into the draft, which if you look back at his comments to me at the Combine, he made it clear, one, he wanted to be drafted. Two, he wanted a role. And so I think the room that, whatever X and O organization was willing to offer him early in his career, I think he ultimately decided that he could have did better than that after another year here. And then obviously everybody was pitching it to him. I thought some of the fan pitches were weird. They were like, yeah, you're not ready. Come back. That was their big pitch. You're not ready. But so ultimately, I think there was there were people in his camp adamant about him staying in the process and really going through that. And I think he ultimately decided, like, school is the best thing. And like you mentioned, it came down to the wire. I mean, obviously I haven't been here for long. You've been here longer, Tom, but that feels like easily the wildest day of Creighton Twitter that I've experienced to this point.
That and Nemhard leaving. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, no, I agree totally. I think this is the world we now live in, right? We have to wait for the tweet. Coach Mack tweeted the excitement. I guarantee he didn't know either. So he's watching Twitter too. So probably from the first tee box. Oh, sorry, Mac. But what am I sorry? He's playing golf. I'm not. But he's also got a hell of a team coming back now. When I really think this. I was trying to look at this, and I know I shouldn't look at those NBA mock drafts because scouts are telling media guys, we like this. We're GMs are, everybody's. But there's so many games that they play. It's like the NFL draft. They're trying to get people to think we like this guy, but we don't want you to know we like this guy.
Right.
It's all a gamble, and it's all you don't know what's going to happen. But I did see Trey. I saw his name a lot on those drafts, the mock drafts over the last few weeks. CBS had him 19th overall going to Golden State. That happened.
And now, is that next year?
That happened last Monday.
That was for this year's draft.
It popped up last Monday that he's going to Golden State in the first round. I'm going, holy crap, where did that come from? Now, do you believe it or not?
All right.
That's the problem for him. He doesn't know what to believe. To me, it's all about a second round money and second round no guarantees. Look, the NIL is guaranteed money. That's where the guaranteed money is these days. The NIL. I mean, for a lot of these guys.
Close to it. At least at Creighton it is, yeah.
And I don't know what I say guaranteed. Maybe
I know what you mean.
It's not guaranteed. But I'm just saying, I think if you looked at it, if Nemhard had come back, then what's Trey's role?
What was it?
He's the shooting guard. But it's still Nemhard's team, right? It's still his show, and I really think Nemhard leaving opened the door for him to stay, Trey to stay, because you sell him. I know Mac was going to do this. He told me that he's probably going to be the new point guard. And yeah, Ashworth, fine, but Trey's proven he can do it, and that's the way to sell him. If that's what the NBA wanted him to do, go back and work on that. But see, I think it's and it came down to the West. But I'm sure this is a part of his decision was, with Nemhard gone now, the team, everything goes through Trey Alexander next year. It's his team. It's his show, his team. Yes, they have Shireman, Kalkbrenner, so on and so forth, but he can dominate games, and he's proven that. And he can be spotlighted. Okay, is it a risk to come back? Yes, it's a risk to come back. You don't know what you're going to be doing next year in the draft, but he can make he can improve his stock. He can improve his brand. He can improve everything about his identity, his role. Then if he's in the G League or whatever, what's he going to, he's just another guy trying to fight his way up, but he's going to be spotlighted in all of these TV games, the Big East, whereas he's in a new position, the point guard. He can kind of reinvent himself a little bit. So I really think Nemhard leaving opened the door for him to stay.
Yeah. Okay. A few things you said that I thought were interesting. The whole mock draft. I think that was CBS. I didn't see who the writer was. But I thought that was BS from jump. I couldn't tell if it was a GM that fed that as some smoke there or what it was.
Or a writer who just liked the guy.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think ultimately that's what it was. A guy who was trying to get ahead of the curve and say, I'm a real Trey Alexander fan. Let me put him here.
I was very surprised to see it.
Yeah, because I had no other explanation. Not like Trey Alexander can't be a first-round guy next year. Mm-hmm. I've probably been one of the people higher on Trey Alexander, but if we're being real, what he was supposed to show, what teams were asking of him during that week in Chicago, he didn't show. I think he had 0 assists between those 2 days. They wanted him to be in ball screens. They wanted him to be Compton as a combo guard, and sure he showed he could score it, but he did that all year. And that kind of leads me to the point you made about Nembhard. I think that was obviously one of the sells, and I think that is maybe a double-edged sword. You know, Nembhard was his guy, as was Kaluma. That's something he had to probably battle with and look around at the locker room and see, you know, how many of my guys are here. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure how much it weighed his decision, but I'm sure it had to certainly be a factor. But ultimately, you see a guy in Ashworth who, people I think were less upset when Nembhard left. We talked about this countless times because of Ashworth's game and how he fits into this system and how good of a shooter he is. I mean, not just how good of a shooter he is, how much of a difference there is between him and Nembhard as shooters. Now, probably not the same rim pressure, probably not the same burst, but you're going to get similar pick and roll prowess. You know, you're going to get elite off-ball play as that type of shooter. And I think that was obviously the way they were trying to sell Trey Alexander the entire time. Like, hey, look, if scouts really want to see you on the ball and in pick and roll and setting guys up, you got an elite shooter on this side. You got an elite shooter on this side. You're probably going to have a shooter at the 4. I don't know which direction they're leaning at the 4. It feels like this has been a Mason Miller spring. If it's a Mason Miller summer, I don't see why it wouldn't be him. Obviously something to go deeper into, and that could probably be ever-changing. But you're looking at a bunch of shooters around him and then a guy in Kalkbrenner whose pick-and-roll gravity is among the best in the country. So you're looking at a perfect half-court setting for a guy who has this stuff to prove to NBA teams over the course of this next year. And I think beyond money, like we talk about money with all these dudes because NIL is so prevalent now, but I think at a certain point something probably clicked within Trey, just in terms of decision making, like his development, kind of like we talked about. Like he saw, obviously it hasn't unfolded yet, but he's seen, decision making with Nembhard and his decision. He's seen decision making with Kaluma and how that's probably going to unfold. He's seen, if you look to the bench, Trey Ziegler had a hell of a career where decisions really, I don't want to say pay the price, but his decisions were heavy.
Yes. And
with a guy like that in his ear, it's easy to really not change your decision making, but it has an effect on your decision making. I think ultimately it came down to that.
And I think you're right. He's got his two buddies, but it's simple. You've got to grow up, and I think he's growing up. He's coming into that point of his career where, okay, this is going to get serious and real, and he's got to think about himself. And the best thing for him was going or staying, and I think staying ultimately is going to be better for him. I think he'll have an opportunity to make it better. Whereas if you go into the NBA, you don't know where you're going to get drafted. You don't know where you're going to be next year. You might get thrown into some situation that's not good, and you don't grow. At least he knows he can grow at Creighton. Again, I really think Nembhard's special. I don't know Ashworth. I don't know if he can hold up against the Big East guards. Maybe we'll see. We'll just see. But I know Nembhard. I've seen him. You've seen him. He's special. Now that they've got everybody locked in, they need to throw him into the gym with Kalkbrenner and get that same chemistry going that Nembhard and Kalkbrenner, they had radar. Kalkbrenner was dangerous. He drove into the lane. If you collapsed on him, he was doing the alley-oop. If you let him go, he was doing the layup. I mean, that they need to get that game going because nobody can stop that. But I just thought about Mac last night thinking, he's got two combo guards. And not many teams have two guys who can play point at the same time and also be the off guard at the same time. Mm-hmm. And he's got them. And think about the possibilities there for a offensive wizard who likes to try different stuff.
Right. And
now what does Kalkbrenner do? Because is he working on his threes? What's that going to be like? You got King underneath. You bring Kalkbrenner out. Holy crap. What the hell's that all about?
Twin Towers, you think?
Well, I mean,
no.
They've got,
not having it.
That'd be great to watch.
He's got options. He's got options, and he will use them. And he's going to have these guys, Mason Miller. Yeah, we'll see. Isaac Trout has never played college basketball. He might be great. Tony Bennett of Virginia certainly thought he was great. You took him, and then they sent him out for a year to develop him, but he's never played a game. So they'll ease that into it. Another thing about next year's the schedule is much more manageable. It's easier. It's better because this team. I think that they're doing a trip right in August or something.
Yep.
That's where they'll get a lot of the stuff going. But they'll be able to ease into they couldn't ease into anything last year.
Right.
So, but they had a more experienced group together last year too. This year, be figuring some things out. I'm excited. I think it's going to be fascinating. But I promise you, Trey Alexander is going to be the guy. You know that, and I think that's why he came back.
Yeah,
go ahead.
And I think I agree. Like Nembhard was special. Like this is gonna get lost in all this because, and maybe every fan base is like this, but I think it was a sort of coping where people instantly ditched the idea of Nembhard because of the way it unfolded. And with Ashworth coming in as quickly as he did, people were like, "Yes, hooray, we got our point guard." Like screw Nembhard or whatever. But Nembhard was easily the best point guard in the portal when he entered. Obviously, different styles there. I think Nembhard has almost unparalleled burst with the ball. His rim pressure as a result is up there. Mm-hmm. I haven't watched. I'm not a Steven Ashworth expert. I didn't watch every game he played last year, but I don't see the same rim pressure from Ashworth. Obviously, he offers different things. The range. Being able to play off the ball because of how efficient he is as a shooter. Mm-hmm. But you're right, Tom. We got to see him play. But I will give him the benefit of the doubt because I do think this system elevates players regardless of stars and talent, whatever. I think this system just elevates players. I think Mac just elevates players, and I think that takes some of the load off Ashworth to not have to be Nembhard or not have to offer some of the same things Nembhard did. And obviously Trey Alexander is going to have to take a step anyway. I mean, part of the pitch was like, yo, you're going to be National Player of the Year conversation, which is kind of crazy to say, but he's going to be in the running to be this team's best player. Now, him and Kalkbrenner are on opposite sides of the spectrum in terms of how important they are and what side of the floor they are significant in. I think Trey. I seen somebody say this on Twitter this week. Kalkbrenner raises the floor because you turn, and this is my offering. You turn probably a sub 100 defense in the country to a top 20 defense almost instantly when you add him. And then they said Trey Alexander raises the ceiling because you take the team that you have, you take a Steven Ashworth who's on-ball, off-ball guy, you take Baylor Shireman who's a good second side, third side guy, another playmaker, good shooter, and then you add Trey Alexander who obviously gets his own shot probably better than any guys we're talking about, can play in the pick and roll, is as tough a shot maker as this team has seen probably in several years. And so you take that, and then that's when we get to talking about, okay, Creighton is a top 5, top 10 team. Like we could not possibly have these discussions until he made his decision.
You always know now at the end of games, you don't know who will exactly take the last shot, but you know who will have the ball in their hands to decide whether it'll be Trey or he passes it to someone. You will know.
I really think
he'll be the guy.
I think it'll all go through him. I agree. And Mac's best teams have had a guy who could drain the three. And they haven't had that the last couple of years. It's been up and down. They don't have the lethal shooters that he's used to. And Ashworth, if he could fill that role, then God love him. That's what they need. And they've got Sharpman doing that. But they need guys who can just, when that ball goes up, it's going in from three. And you take that, and then if you're defense, what do you got? Sharpman, you got Ashworth. And Trey can shoot it. Who do you stop? So these things, I mean, are they going to be better? I don't know. But they're going to be different. But they could be better. Mm-hmm. I think you might see King step up, and hopefully he will. He might have to. I'm anxious to see Kalkbrenner. What's he going to evolve? They're going to do something different with him. I don't know what it's going to be. But I was going to say, the mock drafts, they're all whatever. But I never saw Kalkbrenner's name mentioned ever. And I never saw Tomonaga's name ever in a mock draft.
Sure not, yeah.
So that at least told me nobody's talking about these guys. So they're not going. There's no way they're going. So, I mean, Kalkbrenner, to me, I'm not Mr. NBA. I follow it, but he's probably a backup center on the NBA. I don't know if he's a starter.
That'd be a hell of a job.
And that's that's
Right.
that's
Well,
a
yeah. I mean, you can be Kyle Korver forever. You can
Right.
you can be Anthony Tolliver, right? Yeah. Matt, Doug Mack. But I'm just saying, I think he could be a great dominant college player.
I agree.
NBA, it could put him on hold. You're tall, you're big. It's going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, the NIL is not bad, and they're opening up the sports bar this month.
Yeah.
Oh, let it
couple
fly.
weeks,
Let
maybe
it
a week.
fly,
Yeah.
baby. Let it fly.
I wish Creighton were playing Kansas in the regular season. Though, I will say that. That'd be awesome.
It's
To
scary.
see him go against Hunter Dickinson.
Could happen in the tournament.
It
You
could.
never know.
Well,
I don't think they lose 6 straight this year.
except,
But
well,
I'm not.
it'll have to happen later because KU will be here in Omaha. Creighton will not.
That's right. Yeah. So, okay, this is the last question, then we'll kind of move to Nebraska. But briefly, so everybody knew who Creighton's starting 5 was going to be last year, and it was about the 5. And if we're going to be honest, when they go to the most important game of the season against San Diego State, basically you listen to what people do, you watch what they do, and more than you listen to what people say. In the final game of the year, Greg McDermott basically said, "We have 5 guys." Because everybody played, and they played every minute. And I'll be honest with you, we didn't talk about it much because the foul at the end was whatever it was, and they lost by 1. They lost the game because at the end of the game, San Diego State has a Guacarope, the 9th guy on the roster, and he's able to take Arthur Kaluma twice in the final 2 minutes because Kaluma's playing 39 minutes. So the question I have is this. Now that you don't have to have 5 guys on the court all the time because you need to make sure that their egos are happy or whatever, you just have 3. You got Shireman, you got Kalkbrenner, and you got Trey. Does this team actually become better? Like, do they actually invest more emotionally in developing the bench because they don't have to worry about whether Nemhard and Kaluma and Kalkbrenner and Shireman and Alexander are all happy? They only have 3 guys that they have to sort of build the program around?
Well, I think there's 4 guys, really. I think Ashworth, you can lump him
But
in
he'll
there.
defer.
But he'll defer. But then you look at the
He'll
depth.
do whatever they tell him to.
You look at the depth they have. I'm using air quotes in the newsroom right now. The depth they have, because realistically, when it comes down to it, like you mentioned, like Mac likes a fixated amount of guys.
Sure.
And I don't know. Maybe this year could be the different year. I mean, we said that last year. I don't know, but you look at their point guard depth, and Ashworth is the only guy who offers that same level of competence at point guard across the board. Now, Trey is going to be in that position a ton this year. There will be lineups just like last year where he's probably, you could even argue he's the only guy who could create his own shot in a lineup, or he'll be the unparalleled point guard because it'll be like Farabello and Lawson, who might get to his own shot sometimes. I don't know. Maybe he'll more so attack closeouts, but the Trey will be the undoubted point guard in certain lineups. But Ashworth across the board is kind of like Nemhard. Like, I thought Nemhard was a top 2 irreplaceable player on last year's team because there was no other point guard who could offer what he could. And even I thought last year the depth was more obvious. You had Sharif Mitchell. We're going to have to see probably a leap from maybe Dotzler if he plays this year. He's probably going to have to show some things.
I don't think he'll play. I think he'll redshirt.
I'm not sure he will either.
But it might depend on the need. But Joel, what do they need from their bench? I mean, if you had to say, okay, we want 2 or 3 guys to play consistent minutes every game, what do they need those guys to do?
I think they're in a good position. Better than last year probably, even though we thought they were in a good position last year. I feel comfortable saying they're in a better position this year because you keep Farabello. You know who Farabello is now.
Yeah.
You know who he is. He's not gonna get better. He's probably not gonna get worse. He's not gonna change. This is his 5th year of college basketball.
It'd be nice if he's a little better.
Sure. But you know the type of player he is.
Sure.
You know what he offers. You bring in Lawson, who still has room to grow into his ceiling. He's only going to play his sophomore season this year. Pivotal piece who good size.
Has no room to ask for anything, has to earn everything.
Yeah, good shooter, fluid for his size. And then you bring back your other bench pieces. And then what I think is interesting that is obviously going to be the most talked about thing now that Trey is out the way and already decided is the 4 spot because that leaves probably a pretty talented guy to come off the bench. And I don't know If it'll be Miller, it'll be Trout. I'm sure that thing is an ongoing thing that'll play out. But
I think that's a good point. And if you what you say, Miller seems to be the favorite, maybe to be the starter. Then you ease Trout in. I mean, he might be a hell of a guy off the bench.
Oh.
And then you got King, right? You guys got that guy.
Yeah, Jason Green.
I mean, yeah.
People have forgotten about
I think
Jason.
this bench could be better, but they've got to go out and do it.
right, yeah, and let's say, of Ashworth, Trey, and Shireman, there's 2 of those 3 on the floor at all times, or maybe even 1 if it's just Trey. Then you're looking at next to him is probably Farabello, Lawson, one of those 4 men, and then King, which I think another year King, Farabello is who he is. Develop Lawson. You see which one of those 4s ends up, giving you good bench minutes. That's a good bench lineup with just Trey in the game.
Yeah.
Then we talk about other lineups where you could have Trey and Shireman instead of maybe a Farabello or whoever. There are different possibilities with this that I think they didn't have last year. The schedule, kind of like you mentioned, gives them opportunity to test some stuff out earlier than they could last year, because last year was a juggernaut, crazy Thanos schedule. Like it was nuts. And now this year, it's not a weak schedule, but it's in between.
Manageable.
They got good games.
It's manageable, and that the Kansas City 2 games down there.
That's one of those
That's
games.
where you can build.
And now they're playing UNLV.
Right, UNLV at Jack Jones.
And you got
Which I don't know how good.
I mean, the best game is arguably Iowa coming in.
Oh, Alabama's the best game.
Alabama. I'm sorry,
Alabama's
Alabama. And Oklahoma State. I mean, I wish it was somebody different, but
There's room.
they're
for
good.
these guys
They're
to grow.
good, but they're not Creighton.
They always have good athletes.
Yeah.
That's what you know about
They-
Oklahoma State.
Anyway,
There's room for these guys to grow in these games. The schedule is going to allow for that. I'm sure they were intentional about that, and they probably picked the right season to do it, because I think they're looking at their bench and maybe licking their chops compared to last year.
So what I'll say is, this is the last thing I'll say, is that and I could be completely wrong. I probably am wrong. But there's this emotional idea of, outside of Trey Alexander, who I think on some level they owe. Like, you decided to come back, we owe it to you to develop you in a way that gets you where you want to go. The rest of the guys, maybe Kalkbrenner. We owe it to you to let you shoot 3-pointers because that's what you need in order to get to the next whatever. The rest of those guys, you came back with your eyes open, or you transfer here with your eyes open. You'll do what we tell you to do. And I think it will benefit them, because I think part of what happened last year is you had 5 guys that you're all trying to do right by him. And, you're trying to do right by Nembhard. And they like Nembhard. They're trying to do right by Art because he could go to the NBA. They're trying to do right by Trey. They're trying to do right by Ryan. They're trying to do right by Baylor because maybe Baylor will go to the NBA. Now there's 2 of those guys, and then Shireman's kind of who he is. You came back, didn't you? So you know what you're here to do. Win. You're not here to go to the NBA because you could have just done that. And the rest of those guys have nothing that they can demand. Maybe Mason Miller, but not really. You've been here 2 years. You had a chance to do whatever you wanted to do. So here you go. I think it will benefit their culture to be able to say, hey, there's 2 guys in this room who are going to the NBA. And the rest of you guys, we're here to win. And I think it'll help them. That's my thought.
I think there's something to that. I really think it will come out more in the who's the leader. And who are the followers? And those are the best teams when you have the leader. And then when all 5 guys are trying to figure all that out, I don't know. It sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I think you're right when it's Trey and Kalkbrenner. Kalkbrenner has obviously, as you've written, stepped up and been more of a leader. I'd like to see more of that from him. He could be they got 2 Big East Player of the Year guys, 2 of them. Now, which one I don't know, but Kalkbrenner could be that guy.
Absolutely.
He could dominate in the Big East. Just go do it. But Mac will certainly feed him if he's. But the ball's going through Trey's hands. He has the ball, so he has more control than Kalkbrenner does on that deal. But
he could have a huge year. He could have a 20 and 6 and 5 year. It could be an incredible. He could have an incredible year.
I'm fascinated by it because I don't think they're going to get the love in the Big East that they did last year. They won't be favored, I don't think. You've got Patino coming in, Cooley at Georgetown. All the pressure, all the UConn is on fire.
UConn's going to be the favorite
until
again,
they
whether
do
they
something
deserve it or
stupid.
not.
I don't think so. I don't think
Well,
so.
they're
You
going to go.
think- you don't
to
think UConn's gonna be the
I think
favorite?
it's Marquette or Creighton. I mean,
Well, and
Andre
I
Jackson's
haven't
gone.
even mentioned Marquette yet because everybody loves Patino and Georgetown. But yes, Marquette. But
Their two best players are back. Well, two of the three best players.
just don't
Because
let.
one guy stayed in, didn't he?
Who, UConn or Marquette?
Marquette.
So
Marquette got everybody back, I'm pretty sure.
Prosper.
All right, Prosper did leave.
but,
They're still up there, though.
Well, they're
You
still
get-
up there.
You get Kolick,
They were a
and-
better team than Connecticut until they got to the tournament.
You get Kolick,
Yeah.
you get Iguodala, you get
Yeah,
all
they're
the
good.
core
They're a
players you
good
have
team.
besides Prosper.
But I think this where the program is right now, it's about March. It's not about January, February.
Yeah, no, I'm not mad at that. And I kind of the sentiment you brought up has me thinking, Sam, because I look at by position. You're right. All five guys essentially had something to prove. Maybe Nembhard being dead last in that because I think the pro stuff kind of felt more distant for him than anybody. But Kaluma came in mock lottery. Trey Alexander, I think in November was mock second round by one faithful person, I think, at the Athletic.
Yeah.
Kalkbrenner was at the back of second round mock drafts all year. Shireman was in similar range. Like, all these guys had NBA stuff to prove, and now you mentioned it. Shireman's back. He's back for a reason. I think with another year of similar shot diet, getting used to, because his shot diet and shot selection were different between where he was before and Creighton.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think another year of what he did last year obviously benefits him. I'm not sure how much room there is for him to grow draft standing wise, but next year will not be as deep a draft. He'll have more room to grow. I think there were teams that were Colt Baylor Shireman fans. Like, there were teams that were going to pick up on Shireman, whether he was drafted or not. Teams were going to get in on him. So I'm not sure. I think all he has to do is have a similar year to what he did last year. So you're right. Trey Alexander has things to prove before making that first round leap. Kalkbrenner, I don't think there's much room for his draft stock to grow either. I think it'll just have to come down to next year being a weaker draft.
They're just going to let him shoot threes.
Yeah, I think those are the only two guys that have to prove. You look at Ashworth. Ashworth, while the pros are in his sights, I don't know about the NBA.
Yeah.
And I think
He'll
he's
do whatever they tell him.
I think he's probably better served just being part of the system and not stepping out of himself anyway.
Yeah.
Where not to say Nembhard was doing that, but I think he's better served to do that. And then at the 4 spot, they don't have a guy there that those guys are competing to show whether they're the best starter. They're not competing.
I
to do
think
it for the
this
NBA.
is more of a Coach Mack team.
Yeah.
I think it's a team he loves more. The kind of guys not the Kaluma and them are certainly not bad guys, but there's a lot of egos in that room and a lot of talent, and a lot of guys focus on the NBA, and I think he's gonna. When you get guys that are just college guys, basically, I think he's gonna enjoy this more, and he enjoyed last year. I'm not saying he didn't, but I think this is more of his kind of team.
I think he loved that team. He didn't always like them. I think he's going to love and like this one. Quickly on Nebraska.
Yeah.
Okay, so Keisei Tominaga announces at 7 p.m. Wednesday night he's coming back. That announcement was timed, so it would be 9 a.m. in Japan when he did it. He's back. I think that was the expectation of Nebraska all along as it relates to the NBA draft. I think that the advantage that he got by declaring for the NBA draft is that he was able to work out for teams, and they were able to give Keisei feedback that will put him in position to potentially be more interesting as a prospect 1 year from now. The challenge, the issue that Nebraska had going into the summer, in my opinion, is related to Japanese professional basketball. And I think he will make NIL money at Nebraska. Now, exactly how that works, I don't know, because you can't necessarily make it if you're a foreign student-athlete the same way, an international student-athlete, the same way that you can if you are an American student-athlete. But they'll figure that out. And then, I think he's having a press conference tomorrow. I think Keisei is a man of his word. He's coming to Nebraska. He's coming back. We've seen this once before, where Nebraska had a guy come back, and Andrew White, and then Andrew White decided to transfer to Syracuse because he was a graduate and could do it. In theory, all those things can happen. In theory, Keisei could potentially go back to Japan, but I think he'll stay. And then that opens up what this program is going to be. for this upcoming year. They're going to go after a couple more transfers at maybe the 4 spot. As I've said to Joel, to his great irritation, I think they should pursue Arthur Kaluma. I don't think they will.
The teams that Arthur
I
Kaluma is
think
looking
they
at
should.
are way out of Nebraska's range. We talking about the best teams in the SEC, the best teams in the Big 12.
We'll see.
They can't afford him.
Well, maybe not. But the point is,
And
that I think
I love saying that because it's now legal.
he would be an incredible fit in that offense where what they could do with him if he was willing to do it. But they're not going to do that. At any rate, we have a pretty good idea of what they're going to be. So Casey is obviously going to be at the 2. He won't play really any point guard. Jamarcus Lawrence and Aaron Eulis, that's Tyler Eulis' little brother, the Iowa transfer, those are probably going to be your point guards. And then you have a pretty good idea of what you have at the 3 spot with Bryce Williams, the Charlotte transfer, C.J. Wilcher, who's willing to come off the bench. He did that last year. Apparently he's willing to do it again. You know who your 5 is going to be. It's going to be a Fred Hoiberg 5 and Rinkmast. And then your 4 is either Josiah Alec, or if you want to go with Juwan Gary, presuming he's healthy, Juwan Gary can be your 4. He's 6'6", but he can guard bigger players because of his wingspan. Josiah Alec could also start. They're going to love Josiah. They already love Josiah Alec. The fans are going to love him. They've got some depth. The question is, can they coalesce all of that into what amounts to a 19-win season? In order to do that, they have to be Creighton. And there's a couple other games that they got to win too, and one of them is they got to be Creighton at home. Tom, if you want to talk about Casey coming back, that by all means, this has been expected for a while.
No, I just think
Nebraska's not as interesting a program as Creighton.
the Japanese media was following them around Lincoln. I enjoyed them. They were walking around with their NBA Finals bags, coming to the press room, and these are media people that follow everything. I guess the Japanese. He can always play professionally in Japan. He can always go back there and be that guy. He'll be popular. He'll make a lot of money, but he's not going to do that and go to the NBA. If he wants to try his shot at the NBA, he's in the right spot.
Yeah.
Yes, Nebraska does not send. I'm just saying he's got a head coach who has a lot of contacts and can get him tryouts, who can get him in this, that deal. And I think people, I think the scouts have to be at least, their imaginations have to be at least peaked at that. What could this guy do if he does it all year? He was a second half guy last year. He really fits Fred's offense. He's a perfect match for that. But can they keep the blue collar defensive edge too? Juwan Gary's going to be the guy to lead that.
And Casey has to get better.
Yeah,
that's the key. He's
going
to start, but he's got to be a better defender than he's been.
Sam Weasel did so much,
and
so it's a different team. I think this is a different conversation than what we had with the Creighton. I think Tominaga gives them a chance to go to the NIT, to be that kind of a team, and go to postseason. What that does for Hoiberg, and that's a whole other conversation. But I
think it'd get him another year.
Maybe we'll see. But I think.
Yeah.
But I think what Tominaga does, he changes the narrative in Lincoln from, we're all pissed off, we never do anything, we just woe is us. All those Husker fans love this. Husker basketball fans, they aren't happy unless they're miserable half the time. We never, we're the downtrodden, we're jinxed, blah blah blah. He changes the narrative to, hey, this is exciting, this is fun. There's some absolute possibilities here. So it makes it a better experience for everybody.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And then I think people are in a better mood, and maybe that helps Fred, certainly. But they've got to get to postseason. I think he helps do that. And teams in the Big Ten, they always coaches are good. They figure out things, but they haven't quite figured out how to handle him. And
right,
it may take him a little bit longer. But so I don't know. I see Nebraska basketball as okay, better, but now still not good enough. But Tominaga changes the conversation. So I'm glad he's back. He could take a shot with the NBA next year, whether it works or not. He could always go back home and have a nice career there if it doesn't work out. But we'll see. But yeah, last night was fun. It was like, hey, this, the two biggest names we're going to have next year came back.
Yeah, it was, and we'll see what Casey's able to do. The underrated part of his game is he is unusually good moving without the ball, and he finishes at the rim. His 2-point percentage is 61%, which was second in the Big Ten. Actually, maybe second in the nation. It's because when he gets to the rim, he doesn't miss. He's acrobatic. He knows how to finish around the rim. So that's the part of his game that people have a hard time stopping, because if you take him away as a 3-point shooter, he can still move off the ball. And if Rink Mass is nearly as good of a passer as Derek Walker, Casey's still a threat. And so we'll see what happens. I think Nebraska has a chance to be a 17, 18, 19 win team, but it takes really good health, and it takes all of those transfers being just as good as Nebraska envisioned.
And you got to win. They overloaded the schedule last year. Both Creighton and Nebraska overdid it. They did. They don't need to do that. And so Nebraska needs to win games. They don't need to prove anything to anybody.
The Big Ten ACC Challenge is over.
Yeah.
They don't have that anymore. Of course, we know why they don't have it anymore, because the Big Ten doesn't have a relationship with ESPN. That's why it doesn't exist. So they had to cancel the contract.
Right, that's fine with Nebraska. Nebraska's always playing Georgia Tech or Miami, Miami was good now, but one of those, Boston College or somebody.
Right.
So who cares from Nebraska's standpoint?
They don't have K-State again. They have Oklahoma or Oregon State up at South Dakota. Obviously, Creighton is on their schedule. There's a report that they're going to be in this MTE, that they're going to play over 10 days against Rider and Duquesne and some other team from the Northeast. But Nebraska's schedule will be more manageable next year, and they won't have to play Oklahoma in Orlando on Thanksgiving. That was way too hard for them.
I'll be excited about the Creighton game. But Creighton would be favored, but Nebraska beat them last year, and there's enough swag coming back for Nebraska playing at home. It's at least intriguing. It's an intriguing game. It's a matchup you can kind of sink your teeth into. Mm-hmm. So
the fear's kind of gone a little bit
as we prepare to go to the Pop-Tart Bowl. Oh, I'm sorry.
It could be. It could be a Pop-Tart. Okay, for Tom and Joel, I'm Sam. That is our Half Court Press podcast for this week. Maybe we're back next week. Maybe we're not. But we will eventually talk about what Big East and Big Ten teams did and who they gained and who they lost, so that we have a relative context for what Creighton and Nebraska are dealing with this summer. Thanks, fans.